Welcome to the latest edition of the Hudson County Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Haig, and don't forget that the Hudson County Sports Podcast is brought to you once again by the great people at Stan Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. The telephone number there is 201-798-4466. And with me today is perhaps my most special guest that I've ever had in the 2 years of doing the podcast, and the main reason being is that not only do I consider him a contemporary, although he's a little bit older than me, but I consider him a contemporary, but also he was a colleague of mine for 6 years. We both worked together at the old Hudson Dispatch in Union City, and we've known each other for going back to 1978, so that's 43 years this year. That's a long time. And I'm safe to say that this is my good friend, legendary sports writer, basketball coach, Mike Spina. Mike, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm fine, Jim. Thank you for those kind words.
Well deserved, and I wouldn't say it to you unless you were in. If you were in my company, I would probably say something else. But considering the fact that it's on the podcast, I'll talk freely. Only kidding. You know how much I respect you and I like you. All right. No problem. All right, let's turn the clock back about 15 years at least and go back to your childhood days in Hoboken. And what was that like? First of all, where were you? What part of Hoboken were you born and raised?
Actually, I grew up on Washington Street, across the street from City Hall and across the street from the old Fabian Theater.
Wow. So there were homes there across the street from City Hall then, huh? Back then?
Well, they were apartments.
Okay. And what was it like growing up in Hoboken at that time? I would imagine there must have been tons of kids to be playing ball with, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much homebound. Not for any reason other than I was small and I went to grammar school at St. Joseph's, which was God, I don't remember what street it was on. I think it might have been Monroe. There wasn't much area to play out there. It was all city streets.
All right. So then, where did you get your athletic background from?
Actually, not until high school.
Seriously, you didn't play at all in grammar school? Nothing?
No, not really. There was really nowhere to play other than like things like box ball and stuff like that.
But you didn't go to any neighborhood schoolyards and go play there? No.
No, there wasn't many schoolyards around back then.
Wow.
No, not really. Really started my athletics in high school.
Okay. All right. And then where did you go to high school? St. Michael's?
No, I actually went to a seminary. I was going to become a priest.
You were ready to become a priest?
Well, it was high school.
Wow.
It was St. Francis Seminary in Staten Island.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how'd you get there every day?
Oh, well, I lived there during the school year. You stayed there during the school year. You came home on holidays and, vacation, stuff like that.
What was that like?
Well, it was good because, besides the religious part of it, all you had to do was play ball the rest of the time. So any recreation time that we had, I was either down in the gym or when it was, nice weather, we'd be outside playing ball. Okay. They had an athletic field. And we played touch football. We played baseball. In fact, one of the things I remember back then is playing baseball there, and we played a team that was called Tony's Tigers. And I remember as a freshman, I was playing ball, and the guy, the coach from the other team, was very impressed with me, and he told my coach that. My coach was actually the priest and the head rector of the place. Okay. Yeah, but they were very impressed with me, and that's where I got my start playing ball.
And what was Tony's Tigers? Where were they based at? Somewhere in Staten Island?
Yeah, they were in Staten Island somewhere. Okay. And they would, we didn't travel. They would come and play us on our home field.
Okay. How tough was it for you as a kid growing up in Hoboken, having to go to a seminary school in Staten Island and being away from your friends and all?
Well, I guess it was tough, but I made friends at the school. it was pretty much like you were living there most of the year, except for the summers and, vacation time and stuff like that. So, that's where I made most of my friends, and I had most of my friends from school. In fact, to this day, I still have some people that I know from back then.
Well, and at that point, Mike, were you thinking about becoming a priest? Was that something that was in your thought process?
During my high school years, but probably my junior year, I knew I wasn't going to make it, but they did allow me to continue and graduate there.
Okay, how did you know at junior year that you were not going to become a priest?
Well, I just, I love sports too much, and it seemed like that was at the time a lot more important to me.
Okay, and talk a little bit about the teams that you liked growing up as a kid, back in the 50s, in growing up in Hoboken. Who were the teams that you rooted for?
Well, I don't remember too much until probably the beginning of my high school years. I was always a Yankee fan. I watched all the games and stuff. And when I was in high school and the seminary, you didn't get too much time to watch TV. The one highlight I remember was during NCAA time. They always let us watch the championships, even though they were on late at that time.
Okay, and who was that you watched that you remember watching the NCAAs? Do you remember offhand?
I don't remember the teams that were in the finals, but I always liked Seton Hall.
Okay.
And that's where it ended up going.
Okay. All right. What was it about Seton Hall that made you want to go there?
I guess probably the fact that they were good at baseball. They had a College World Series team, I think, every year, and that impressed me a lot. I loved playing baseball, so I had hoped to make the team out there. Of course, I never did.
Okay. All right. Who was the baseball coach then? It wasn't Shepard yet, right?
No, it was Owen Carroll.
Oh, Owen Carroll. Wow. All right.
Yeah, Owen Carroll.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
That's a long time ago. Okay. And was Ted Fiore at Seton Hall when you were there? Do you remember?
No, he was at St. Peter's, I think.
No, he went to Seton Hall. He's in the Seton Hall of Fame. So he.
Yeah, no, I don't remember him.
Oh, you don't remember him? Okay, because I'm saying.
Come after me.
Yeah, no, he was there from like say 63 to 66. Is that right around the same time you were there?
Might have been. Yeah, I was there from 64 to 68.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So maybe you just didn't. You just missed each other, and then he was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds because he's in the Seton Hall of Fame for being a baseball player. So, and then he got drafted by the Reds, and he's.
Back then, I was worried more about me than anybody else.
Yeah, I can hear you. All right. So, did you get involved in sports at all at Seton Hall? Did you follow the baseball teams and do any writing for the Centonian or something like that? Did they get you involved?
When I started at Seton Hall, like my freshman year, I went out to the freshman team, and I really didn't make it. They said they had this kid coming in on a scholarship. I still remember his name, Dick Szymanski.
Okay.
And I was going to wind up sitting behind him, so I really didn't want to sit. So I took up sports writing and went from there. Okay.
And how did and your family was still living in Hoboken at the time?
No, they moved to Jersey City Heights.
Oh, okay. All right. So you were living in the Heights, and did you at that point then one way or the other start to get involved in sports writing? And how did the Hudson Dispatch come into play?
I worked there a couple of summers. This was, of course, back then they had the Hudson Dispatch and the Jersey Journal were rivals.
Right.
I worked there a couple of summers, and then when I graduated, the Dispatch hired me.
Who was the sports editor then? Lud?
Yeah, Lud Shabazian.
Okay. And what did he say that he liked about you that got him to hire you?
Oh God, I don't even know. He wasn't a guy much for work.
Right. No, he wasn't. All right. Who were some of the people that you worked with? Did you work with Freddie Cranwell, and did you work with Bob O'Connor, and Trying to think. Arnie Leshin, of course, yeah, because the two of you were
I
friends.
worked with those guys until I went to the Journal.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to remember some of the guys that were at the Dispatch. It's tough to going back all those years. God, I can't even remember some of the names. Oh, well, of course I remember Kaz Rakowski from the Journal.
Right. You worked at the Journal with Kaz Rakowski or no? Did you bounce back and forth? Did you go from the Journal to the Dispatch?
Well, as I know, I did work for the Dispatch, and I thought they went out of business a lot earlier than that.
No, I even know the day. April 5th, 1991 is the day the Dispatch folded. A day that will live in infamy. How about that?
Yeah, but I loved covering back then because I didn't have to stay in the office. I was always out covering something,
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have the same freedom as you did, but I tried.
Yeah.
I definitely got that freedom when somebody else left and Zeitlinger became the sports editor. Then I got that freedom. But when somebody else was the sports editor, I did not get that freedom. If you know what your name I'm talking about, and I'm not going to bring up his name.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And when he was fired, my life became a hell of a lot better because it was when he was the sports editor, he ran it like he was a tyrant. So and then when he got canned, it was like I wanted to throw a party. So but go back to your early days at the Dispatch. Did you know that you wanted to stay there as a sports writer all that time?
As I worked, I pretty much knew I was going to go into journalism. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I majored in that in college.
Okay, and then how did teaching come into the mix?
Well, tell you the truth, I don't remember. I do remember my first year teaching was actually the year I graduated college. I worked my first year at St. Anthony's High School.
Oh, you did? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I taught there, and
was Hurley there yet already?
No. He was a grammar school coach back then.
Okay.
I forget the guy's name. He was a big, tall guy. Was the coach back then.
McNamara?
No. I can't remember.
Not Jack McCoy. Is that you're thinking of? Jack McCoy?
No, this was before then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but those were good days.
All right. So you were at St. Anthony's, did you know at that point that you wanted to also become a coach too?
Yeah, pretty much. I liked working with the kids, and as I said, when I took journalism in college, that more or less spurred me on to working with the kids.
Okay. What was your first coaching job?
Oh, geez, I guess it would have to be in Hoboken, St. Francis Academy, I think it was.
Wow. Okay.
And I worked there for like 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And then I got a call from it was St. Thomas.
Okay, so you worked at St. Francis Academy for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you got the call from St. Thomas?
Yes, and then I went there.
All right, and who was it? The nun that called you at St. Thomas?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the names. And, the one who hired me, but that's when I got the call. And I moved over there.
All right, so then you were coaching girls basketball at St. Thomas.
Yep.
And what was it? And you stayed there for what? About 5 years, right?
No, I was there about 9 years.
9 years. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, back then, I didn't have the credentials to be able to teach at public school.
Okay.
So I think I needed like 9 credits. So one summer, and normally they don't feel allowed to take that many credits in one summer. But for some reason they allowed me to, and I got my credits, and that's when I was able to be hired, at the other place.
At North Bergen. Okay. All right. So talk to me a little bit about coaching at St. Thomas. How much fun was that, and who were some of the players that you remember over those days?
The one who stands out the most is probably Patty
Patty Quilty. That's a good friend of mine. Okay. And she's still a friend of yours on Facebook, too, right?
Yeah. And Kathy Phillips, I don't know if you remember her.
Very well. Oh, gosh. I had a hugest crush on Kathy Phillips. Huge crush on Kathy Phillips. I used to deliver the papers to Kathy Phillips' house on Suburbia Drive in Country Village, and I used to hope to God that she didn't open the door because I was so afraid of her because I liked her so much. So, and they were both pretty damn good players, both Kathy Phillips and Patty Quilty.
Oh yeah, they were both good.
Okay.
Quilty loved sitting up on the inside. Kathy was a good outside shooter.
Okay. And yet it should be the other way around. Kathy was a tall girl, and Patty's a little on the short side. She should have been the outside shooter. So.
Well, no, actually, Patty was tall for her age, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and she liked the banging around inside.
No, she liked banging around. Period. No, only kidding. She's a good, long-time good friend, and she'll get a kick out of that line. All right. So you stayed there in 9 years. Did you think you were going to stay there forever?
No, I knew at some point I'd have to move on. I think my last year, I still wasn't even making $10,000. I think I was making $9,200.
And were you working there at the school full time?
Yeah.
You were teaching at the school too?
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, but at some point, I had 2 little kids, and I just couldn't afford to stay there.
No.
But at that time.
And what were you teaching at St. Dom's then?
What's that?
What were you teaching at St. Dom's?
I was teaching actually journalism and English.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I had to stay there because I didn't have the credits to go to public school.
The certification, yeah. Okay.
Certification. So as I worked and I finally got that, then I was able to apply and get hired in North Bergen.
Okay. And did you have any connections at all in North Bergen, or is that completely out of the blue?
I'm trying to think back then. I don't think I had any. No, I don't think I had any connections. I think I just got it. They needed someone.
Okay. And then what did you teach at North Bergen?
I taught English and journalism.
English and journalism. Okay. And then how did you come about coaching girls basketball?
Actually, it just the position opened up, and I thought I'd like to be a coach, and they hired me. Okay. And you stayed there in North Bergen as a coach for over 20 years, right? Yeah. God, I can't remember the year I retired.
Yeah, I'm gonna say right around the same time that the Dispatch folded, maybe a little even longer than that, 92, 93, somewhere around that realm. And you had some great players over those days, including Margaret Gesualdi, was probably your best player, right?
Yes.
And she ended up going Division I for about an hour and a half, but she was a D1 player, right? Didn't she go to LIU, I think? Where did she go to school?
I can't tell you the truth, it's so long ago, I forgot.
Oh, okay.
But I know she kind of got homesick and wanted to come back.
Right. And she was a 1,000-point scorer for North Bergen, there's no question. And her name still is on the wall.
Yeah.
Right?
She was good.
Yeah, and then she had...
Good kid, too.
Good kid, real good kid. And she was first team All-County 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So, and you got real close to winning championships in North Bergen. And when I say real close, I mean going to the divisional championship twice in a row. That must have been a little frustrating that you just couldn't get over the hump, right?
Yeah, it really was.
Okay.
But we gave it our best.
Okay, and you had a good group of girls every year, right?
Oh yeah, they were tremendous. A lot of them had played in grammar school, and so they had a good background coming in.
All right. Didn't you also coach Carol Cook too?
Yes, Carol Cook and her sister.
Yeah. Carol Cook is now still, and maybe she might have retired by now, but she was an All-State, and I mean first-team All-State in softball, which is very rare for Hudson County. Hudson County doesn't get first-team All-State softball players, but she was.
That was her best sport, softball.
Right, but she also played basketball. There's no question, and she is. Like I said, I think she might have retired from the Guttenberg Police Department, but she was a Guttenberg police officer for many, many, many years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
Yeah, see, when I moved down here, I lost track of all my old students and friends.
well, that's a shame. Well, you didn't lose track of me.
No, that's true.
So, all right, let's talk a little bit about those days. Do you remember those days right from say 1986 to 1991, the last year of the dispatch? What was it like to be able to? Oh, first of all, let's turn the clock back. You're working for the dispatch in 1978, and you're given the assignment to go cover the Jersey Indians minor league baseball team in Roosevelt Stadium. And what was it about covering baseball in Jersey City that made you want to take on that challenge of covering the Jersey Indians?
Well, I loved being out, in the fresh air rather than sitting in the office all the time. And I loved baseball. And, to think back then, it was, in a way, it was professional baseball. And I've met some really good people, covering them. God, I forget some of the names, but one name stands out, Angelo LaGrande.
Angelo LaGrande, but that's in the 77 team.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody loved Angelo LaGrande on the 77 team. So was Rico Bellini, who was he was a Seton Hall player. He played on that Jersey Indian team in 77.
That's right, I remember.
Right? But the 78 team is where you and I became very, very good friends because I did everything for that 78 team. And that team had a pretty good center fielder. I can't think of his name. Oh, yeah, Ricky Henderson was the guy's name.
That's right, he did play there a year.
Yes, he did. Okay, and what was that like to be able to cover Ricky Henderson in his minor league years?
Well, if you knew Ricky, he didn't say much.
No.
But, he was always pretty cool with me. And he gave me all the time I ever needed with him. And we became pretty good friends. So that when he made the Yankees, he remembered me when I went over there. And I did cover the Yankees for 1 or 2 years, on their home games.
Okay.
And he remembered me back then.
Wow. See? And incredibly, he didn't remember me at all. And my job used to be to pick him up pick up the four of them. And the four of them lived together on Duncan Avenue. Ricky Henderson, Darrell Woodard, Mike Norris, and Ray Cozy. And the four of them lived in a really bad flat on Duncan Avenue. And my job every day was to pick them up in my nice, beautiful AMC Pacer that was purchased at Morris Motors up in North Bergen on 82nd Street, North Bergen. And my beautiful 1976 AMC Pacer picked up Henderson, Norris, Cozy, and Darrell Woodard every single day. And then after the game was over, I drove them home. So incredibly, Ricky now comes back, and he's playing for the Newark Bears. Right? And I'm working for the Newark Bears, doing the same thing like I did with the Newark Bears that I did with the Jersey Indians. So I wake up to him one day, and I said, Ricky, do you remember me? And he went, no. I said, you don't remember me at all? No. Jersey City? No. I said, I used to pick you up and drive you back and forth to the game every single day. You don't remember that? He goes, the bubble car? Because I had an AMC Pacer. He goes, yeah. I said, yeah, Ricky, the bubble car. He goes, oh, I remember the bubble car. So that's all he remembered was the bubble car. He didn't remember me, but he remembered the bubble car.
Yeah, I don't know what it was for me, but he remembered me.
You were very lucky in that respect, so. But that was, they were a horrible team because they were finished in dead last and they lost 90-something games. But was it fun to be around those guys because they were great guys, every single one of them.
They were good guys. You kind of knew that he was going to go somewhere, and play well.
Honestly, I did the same thing. I thought he had a chance to go someplace. And the general manager of the team was a guy by the name of Mal Fitchman. And
I remember Mal.
And he said one day that he looked out from the press box and said, nobody on this field is ever going to amount to anything. I said, not even Ricky? And he goes, he'll be nothing more than a pinch runner. Well, he was a little wrong there. What do you think?
Yeah, he sure was.
Yeah, he's the all-time leader in stolen bases, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So
he had some career. He
had a great career. So, but he's certifiably nuts. Ricky Henderson used to think that there were only two kinds of people in the world: mullions and scullions. And mullions, you were somewhat ugly, and scullions, you were really, really ugly. And there was only one beautiful person in the world, and that was him. But the rest, everybody else was either a mullion or a scullion. So one time I asked him, I said, okay, if that's the case, Ricky, what am I? He goes, oh man, you're a mullion. I said, okay, well, I'll take that because I'm not a scullion. So mullion and scullions were Ricky Henderson.
I was amazed when I covered the Yankees. For a couple of times I put in, their couple of years I did their home games, and he remembered me.
That is honestly, he didn't remember much. He didn't remember. As a matter of fact, the favorite story about Ricky Henderson is that he once said that when he got signed by the Mets, he went up to John Olerud and said, you wear your helmet in the field. What's that all about? He goes, I just feel more comfortable with it. He goes, man, I played with a guy who wore his helmet in the field. He goes, yeah, that was me. We played together at the Blue Jays. He didn't even remember that he played with him at the Toronto Blue Jays. That the guy who wore the helmet in the field was John Olerud.
Yeah, he was something else, Ricky. What was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. He was in Jersey City. I obviously played in Roosevelt Stadium for a while, and I forgot what I was going to say.
That's all right. But he treated you really well and never forgot you, right?
No, he never did.
Yeah, you're lucky in that respect, right?
I forget what he used to call me. He had a nickname for me, but I can't remember what it was.
Probably Mullion.
No, it wasn't that.
Okay. But he was bizarre. I'm going to tell you now, we're talking about Ricky Henderson real quick. There was one game I was doing both the official scoring and the PA announcing up in the press box, right? And they're playing the Reading Phillies. And he dropped a bunt down the third base line. The third baseman fielded it and threw it wild over the first baseman's head, and it went into right field. And I just went E5, and Henderson's standing at second base and is throwing his arms up in the air at the press box looking at me going, what are you doing, right?
I think I remember that.
Oh, yeah. So now it gets better, right? He gets forced out at third base, and then all of a sudden the phone rings up in the press box, and I used to have to answer the phone in the press box during the game is going on. So I pick up the phone, I say, Jersey Indians. He goes, Jimmy, man, what are you doing to me? I said, who's this? He goes, man, it's Ricky. That was a hit. I said, Ricky.
I remember that exact thing.
You do? You remember? He goes, man, that was a hit. I said, Ricky. I said, where are you calling me from? He goes, Kennedy's office. I said, well, you better do yourself a favor and get back out of the dugout and get onto the field because we're out in the field now. He goes, I want you to change that to a hit right now. I said, I'm not going to do it until after the game is over. He goes, man, that was a hit. And he wanted me to change that to a hit. And I was not going to do it until after the game was over, and I talked to the two managers, and one of them was John Kennedy, was the manager of the Indians, and he said that he thought it was a hit. And incredibly, the manager of the Reading Phillies was Lee Elia. And I don't even remember Lee Elia's claim to fame was that he's the one that went off on that rant about how the fans in Wrigley Field don't have a job. 85% of the world has a job. The other 15 come here and boo. Remember that at all? Right? Well, it was Lee Elia is the one who I talked to. And he said, he gave me credit and said, man, he goes, I got to give it to you. He goes, most people would have just changed it to a hit and not spoke to me, especially, with a home book. He goes, I give you credit for coming over and talk to me. You're a great official scorer. And I went, thank you very much, man. Lee, I appreciate it. And then, so after Lee Elia said that he thought it was a hit and John Kennedy thought it was a hit, then that's when I changed it to a hit. But not when Henderson said that I should change it to a hit. And then I finally told Henderson I changed it to a hit. He goes, see, I told you. I said, well, I'm not, I thought it was an error from the beginning. And I can remember the play like it was yesterday. And Mike Cash was the name of the third baseman who fielded the ball. And he picked it up and he threw it way over the first baseman's head. And I swear, if Henderson would have thrown, if there was a good throw, Henderson would have got thrown out.
I remember those days.
Oh, great days. I love the Jersey, and that's when you and I became friends.
Yeah.
And you actually took part of my greatest scam of all time.
What was that?
Well, I was sick and tired of Wayne Witkowski, coming to the games and taking his girlfriend and going sitting down the other end of the press box and make out with his girlfriend as the game was going on. And the only reason why he was there was to get free concessions. So when it came time for the concession sheet to come around, he would get free soda and hot dogs and knishes and what have you. And after the game was over, he'd come up to me and say, "So, Jimmy, what happened?" And I was basically writing Witkowski's story for him. So I said, "I'm not doing this anymore." So I then got 4 of the Indians to conspire with me and tell them, I said, "Look," I said, "I don't care what happens with the game, but we won the game 10-4. That's what I told them. I said, "We won the game 10-4, and I got my closest friends on the team, like Leroy Robbins and Mac Harrison and Pat Corcoran. They all, conspired with me to tell Witkowski that the Indians had won the game 10-4 when actually we lost 4-0. So then you had the right score in the dispatch the next day, and Witkowski had 4-0 because of me. And that was the end of Witkowski covering the Jersey Indians. He got taken off the beat that day. He was replaced by George Korologos because Jack Powers said, "How in the world can you fall for that prank?" And that was that. It was over. Oh, Jack Powers was a great man, and George Korologos, God rest his soul, he was an incredibly good man. And Witkowski is still with us, and incredibly, he talks to me, even though I did that prank on him. So
where is he these days?
He is out in York, Pennsylvania, covering stuff for like the Buck County Times or in Pennsylvania. That's where he lives. So, all right, we'll be back with the second half of our podcast with Mike Spina after this message from Stan Sports Center. Stan Sports Center is your local full-service sporting goods vendor and authorized team dealer. They offer quality products and dozens of brands to outfit your team top to bottom. Stan's has proudly been supporting the local community since 1946 and is your one-stop shop for uniforms, equipment, online team stores, and much, much more. Locations in Hoboken and Saddlebrook and servicing the entire tri-state area. Visit them on the web at Stans Plural, Sports Plural, CTR. Again, Stans Plural, Sports Plural, CTR.com, and check them out on social media for their latest creations. That's Stan Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. Telephone number there, 201-798-4466. And if you tell Danny and Todd and Louie down at Stan Sports Center that you listen to the Hudson County Sports Podcast, you will get 10% off of anything that's retail in the store. It's not a bad deal. So go down to Stan's and say hi to my boys down there at Stan's and tell them that you listen to the Hudson County Sports Podcast with the immortal Mike Spina, and you will get 10% off of anything that's retail in the store. Not a bad deal. That's our corporate sponsors, Stan Sports Center, and I thank them very much for sponsoring the podcast. All right, we're back now with the second half with our great podcast with my friend Mike Spina, and we talked about my first association with Mike was when I worked with the Jersey Indians, and Mike used to cover the games. Again, in 1970, that was back in 1978. In 1986, I get hired by the Hudson Dispatch to become a full-time sports writer, and who was there but Mike Spina? We get reunited. And obviously you remembered me at that point, I would hope. And what was that like to be able to, the two of us used to work and cover high school games together and pick the games on weekends, and it was for me it was the greatest 5 years of my life. But what was it like for you to be working with people like me and the FA?
Yeah, it was great. Not only good people, but going out and being able to, enjoy the fresh air and cover games and do it with your friends. It was really cool.
Yeah. And what is there anything that you remember about those days at the Dispatch towards the end that stand out in your mind?
Actually, no. Just really covering and always, being able to be out in the fresh air and the people you meet. The people we met in sports in Hudson County. There were some fantastic people. Absolutely.
How difficult was it for you to be a teacher and a coach at North Bergen, and then to keep a level head and be a sports writer covering in Hudson County? And obviously, I don't think they allowed you to cover North Bergen games, but what was it like for you to try to juggle both coaching and covering high school sports?
Well, if you ask my wife, she would tell you that I was never home.
Okay.
Which I wasn't. I would teach till about 2:30, 3 o'clock every day. I'd be able to get home for an hour to, have something to eat, and then I'd be out covering, a ball game here or there, and that was great. Just being able to be out in the fresh air covering games. For a while, I'd have to go back in the office and write, but when the laptops came out and stuff, you'd be able to file, from wherever you were.
Right. Well, the dispatch didn't have any laptops. You had to, if you didn't write from the office, you didn't write at all. So that's. There were some times that you would have to call and dictate your stuff because it was like on deadline. But in terms of, there were no laptops at all at the Hudson Dispatch. You had to go back to the office on 39th Street and bang out your stories.
Yeah, and that was pretty trying sometimes when you had to dictate over the phone.
Right, because you had to find a phone to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you had to find somebody who was capable that used to take the dictation in the office.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And people who didn't know what the difference between Red Wings, if you covered Hoboken, whether or not it was Red Wings one word or Red Wings two words, that alone must have been driving you crazy. See, so.
I didn't care too much about that. Just enjoying yourself and being out in the fresh air and stuff was really good.
Okay. Was there any athlete in those days, Mike, that stood out in your mind that you remember and said, "Wow, this is a great high school athlete, and he's only, the star is on the rise"?
Geez, there were so many back then. I can't think of individual names. You'd probably remember more than me. If you mentioned one, I'd remember.
All right, then let's go. The 1989 St. Anthony basketball team went 33-0 and set the tone for the Tournament of Champions. And now, unfortunately, the NJSIA has just ruled that there will no longer be a Tournament of Champions after this year, which is really sad. But back then, the 1989 St. Anthony team, which was just unbelievable, and they had a power forward by the name of Jerry Walker. They had another forward by the name of Roderick Rhodes, and they had a guard by the name of Terry DeHare, and their point guard was one Bobby Hurley. What was that like to coach those St. Anthony's teams back, or not coach those St. Anthony's teams, but cover those St. Anthony's teams?
Yeah, that was an amazing team, because I actually had taught at St. Anthony's my first year teaching.
Right.
And I got to know Hurley a little bit, but some of the players back then were incredible, and there's nothing much you could say about them. They were super talented.
Did you know early on that Bobby Hurley was going to become Bobby Hurley? Did you know?
Not really, because he really hadn't grown much then.
No. He was scrawny, skinny, and weighed about 140 pounds soaking wet. So, no, you didn't know.
The thing that stood out with him was the way he could dribble the basketball.
Right.
And, you kind of knew that, a coach would take it to the next level, and they did. Okay.
All right, let's turn the clock back even before that. How about the late 1970s when we had two incredible, and I say incredible, high school basketball players in Hudson County, both in North Hudson, namely Jackie Galloon of Memorial, Danny Calandrillo of North Bergen. And what was it like to watch those two play?
Oh, that was incredible. Galloon, I remember, could really handle basketball. And Danny, of course, was an all-around super athlete. And in fact, in a sense, Memorial and North Bergen obviously became big rivals. And they were just incredible basketball players. Mm-hmm. And good guys, too,
Right. Jackie's still a very good friend of mine, and I talk to on a regular basis. He lives in a assisted living place in Paramus. But no, not in Paramus, in Hackensack. But I talked to him on a regular basis, and he still is the number one terms of listeners to the podcast. Most people who listen to the podcast was the podcast I did with Jackie Galoon. That's how much of a following that he had in Hudson County. It's amazing how many people wanted to listen to Jackie Galoon.
You gotta tell him I said hello.
I will do so. I will. As a matter of fact, I'll tell him later on this afternoon because he's somebody who I talk to on a regular basis. So, all right. Turn the clock a little further ahead. And what was it like when the Snyder teams in the mid 1980s that had Raphael Addison, Phil Jameson, and yes, the immortal Clarence "Booby" Richardson? And what were those Snyder teams like?
The second guy you mentioned, what was the name?
Phil Jameson.
Yeah, he was good, but there was another one that you mentioned.
Oh, Clarence "Booby" Richardson. You don't remember Raphael Addison?
Addison was super.
Yeah.
He was really, really good.
Addison went to the NBA. He also has done. He's been a guest on the podcast.
I remember more than the others.
Booby Richardson's legend was gigantic in the fact that he broke the backboard way before Jerome Lane did at Pitt when Bill Raftery said, "Send it in, Jerome." Well, Booby Richardson in a game against, I think it was against Dickinson, went up for a dunk and shattered the backboard at Snyder.
I think I remember that.
Oh, sure. And that was 1982. And Booby shattered the backboard, and they had to stop the game, and they resumed the game the next day at the point of when he broke the backboard at Dickinson.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember that.
Yeah. So they had to play that game over the span of 2 days.
Boy, covering those games in Dickinson was something else. Because it was like you were playing in a cellar.
Yep. Oh, it was unbelievable place. Yeah. And way back then, the heat inside Dickinson was like you'd go outside, it would be like 15 degrees, 20 degrees outside. You go inside the gym at Dickinson, and it'd be like 85. I mean, it was just so you didn't say, "Oh God, I'm sweating like a dog. I don't want to go back outside, sweat like a dog. I'm going to get sick." Like crazy time. So, but all right. So you got very few recollections of Booby Richardson and those great Snyder teams. There was coached by Eddie Butler. Remember Eddie Butler?
I remember Eddie Butler. Richardson, I remember as being really tough inside.
Oh, he was very tough inside. He was a man amongst boys. He was 6'6", and if he didn't run into problems, he probably would have played major college basketball. And then, of course, we know Addison went on to play at Syracuse and was on those great Syracuse teams with Pearl Washington and Ronnie Cycli and those great Syracuse teams. And Raph ended up playing about 11 years in the NBA, and he's still teaching in the Jersey City school system. So and he's doing okay. I talk to Raph every so often. So
all these guys I also love.
All right, we'll do. It's part of my job. So all right. So now how about St. Anthony's? Some of the earliest St. Anthony's superstar was a guy by the name of Charles Mandy Johnson. Do you remember Mandy Johnson at St. Anthony's?
Mandy Johnson.
Okay. And what was he?
I remember him being able to handle a basketball and of course shoot.
Right. And he set the tone. He went to Marquette, and then he set the tone for the guy who replaced him as the point guard at St. Anthony's, a guy by the name of David Rivers. And what was that like to be able to watch David Rivers play in high school?
Yeah, he was another great player, great shooter, and obviously being able to handle the ball well. You just knew that some of these guys were going to go on to star in college.
Right, well, incredibly, you didn't think that they would go on to play at the next level because they didn't get much chance. But I guess Mandy Johnson was the first one from St. Anthony's that set the tone for everybody else to go big time Division I. He was the first one. So he basically set the tone. Mandy was the first one that set the tone for everybody else, and then Rivers and Kenny Wilson, who went to Villanova, then were they followed up and they did it as well. So, but those were great times. And
Yes, they really were.
you know, that's basically what's going to happen here is that your kids are going to be told don't do it again. So, and it all depends upon who the new football coach is. If the new football coach turns a blind eye to it, then crap happens. But if he's a good disciplinarian, like that name I mentioned, then I guarantee that none of that crap is going to happen, and it's just
you know what I mean? Like the idea is we don't need this.
No, it's an embarrassment.
Right, big time.
It's an embarrassment.
50 years, nothing like this has ever happened.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment. If Don Ahern was still alive, he'd be very, very upset with his former player. He'd be very upset because
we're not particularly thrilled about this situation in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's disgusting.
No, disgusting is an understatement. All right, now here's the deal: the football coach who has been removed, first of all, is somebody who I've been very friendly with for 45 years. Okay, but he doesn't have a stellar track record, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Okay, when he was in first time coaching as an assistant with Ahern, he got into a little bit of trouble outside Marist High School that he was, quote, in a car and, marijuana was involved, and he said it wasn't his. He said he took it and threw it out of the car because he didn't want to get in trouble, and but he ended up getting arrested, and I think that ended up costing him his chance to be an assistant football coach under Ahern those last couple of years. So, and then that got pushed under the rug when he became the new head football coach. Like nobody remembered that back in 1970, I guess it was the 80s. I guess it was like 87, 88, one of those 2 years that he got arrested for drugs, and that got forgotten about. So he hasn't had a stellar track record, so to speak. But if this is true that 21 police officers had to come and break up a fight between Barringer and Bayonne, and yes, that's the school that he once coached at, that's pretty bad.
Yep.
That's pretty bad.
We took ourselves out of the playoffs as a result.
Wow. Well, would you have been in though? You were 4 and 5. You needed another.
I don't know because they didn't do the seedings, but we.
I think you were 18th. I don't think you would have gotten in anyway.
But the season was canceled at that point.
Okay. It was over. Yeah, I don't think you were getting in. You were, because the last time I saw you were 18th. So I don't think you were getting in no matter what, even after the Barringer win, which is considered a win because you won the game 24-7. But I don't think that you would have been in the playoffs to begin with, because you didn't have enough power points to qualify. So, but I didn't know. But if you suspended the season at that point, you didn't play in the consolation game. You didn't play in the chance to go to 5-5. You only played 9 games.
That's correct.
Yeah. So if you disqualified yourself from playing in the state playoffs, well, then that's what happened. Well, that's a shame because kids should want to get a chance to play.
That's exactly right.